Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Collaboration Conversations. I am joined this morning by my beautiful co host, Pearl Cox of POW, Pearls of Wisdom. Good morning, Pearl.
Good morning, Regina. I love it when we get together to share just all our ideas and our vision and everything. I so look forward to these sessions.
I do too. I do too. And I'm your host or co host, Regina Partain Bergman of Bridgeport Strategy. So, Pearl and I decided a little while back that it would be a great idea for us to do these LinkedIn Lives to talk about collaborations. And of course, this morning, today, let's see, yesterday or today is the actual day, Pearl, of today
8th of
is
March.
the National Women's Day. And, until I met you, Pearl, I'm not sure I'd ever heard of it. So last year is really when I kind of first became consciously aware. Maybe at some point in my life I was aware, but I don't remember. So, but there's a history behind it. It's not something that started last year, and in fact, the first National Women's Day was celebrated on February the 28th of 1909.
Wow.
Is what I'm told by Google.
Well, I haven't been doing the International Women's Day since then. It's a little bit later.
I'm glad to hear that, Pearl. And it was a day to honor women in the garment industry who went on strike in New York to protest working conditions.
I didn't know that. That
I
is
didn't either.
so special, isn't it?
Yeah. And now, goodness, tell us a little bit about how it's celebrated now and what takes place. Pearl, you're way more up on this than I am.
Well, like you, I hadn't. Well, I say I haven't celebrated. I've probably celebrated International Women's Day for about the last 10 years. But I was one of few. I used to, for quite a few years, I just used to send a message to people on LinkedIn saying, how are you sort of celebrating International Women's Day? And I would get no response. And then they'd say to me the next day, sort of offline, they'd say, what is this all about? You're sending me stuff and I don't know what you're talking about. Right. I know that there is the charity, the International Women's Day.org, which seems to have been where everything has grown. And that's where I take my information from. And the organisation always has a yearly theme. They will choose a specific theme and that will be the theme they will work to. And like so many people, yes, I know it's all over the UK TV at the minute where everyone's saying all the soaps are busy sharing all of the key women in the soap operas are talking about International Women's Day, which they've never done
Oh,
in years before. We've done lots of different programs. We're seeing adverts as well that are all talking about International Women's Day. So it's become
interesting.
bigger message. But no, it's only recently, I'd probably say over the last 3, maybe 4 years, that I've really seen it start to grow. Dare I say that like the Me Too movement maybe sort of jumped on that and helped promote it. But I think the way when I run my projects on this, I just look for strong, empowered women that we can share a message that
Yes,
other women, young and old, can resonate with what we're sharing, and we can be mentors, a guiding light that people can see and say, yes, I like what they do. I want to follow in their footsteps. That's what I see International Women's
right.
stands for me. But as you know, I don't do it as one day. I do it for the whole year. I have a project and I
Yeah.
grow and build up. And quite often it starts to grow and then gains momentum past the 8th. And it's
Right.
normally the second week and into the end of March that we really see the big numbers because people see a difference. And I run lots of panels. I think I'm running 8 panels this year where I'm doing 2 panels a week where women get to talk about their message, their business. And I'm also this year, I'm actually allowing women to share one service or one product that they offer. So it's a
Oh,
way for them to promote themselves as well. And
very
obviously,
nice.
we go back to the hashtag. That theme I talk about, I always go back and we share that. And currently this year, the overarching theme is break the bias. So there's so many different ways we can look at that.
Oh, yes. Yeah, let's talk about that for a few minutes. Break the bias. And you and I have had some conversation around that and and biases that we may not even realize we have.
Yes.
And
Yes,
I,
because
I think that's really where it comes in, where it really is most important, probably, is that we figure out what those biases are that we have and break
and
the bias.
a lot of them can be unconscious. And I think,
Exactly.
because I know when you and I first spoke about it, I wasn't sure this year whether I was going to embrace this theme or not, because it has quite a strong political theme, possibly, if you want to take that slow. And you know, from the work I do, I always try and stay as neutral as possible. But
Right.
the more I've looked at this, I think it's more highlighting to people that there is unconscious bias, and that's going to make people feel uncomfortable, because
Yes.
I mean, people will say to me, and I think, well, I don't have have a bias bone in my body. And then people would say something, and I'm thinking, oh, I haven't thought of it like that, because I'm a white female from a certain background. So I've been brought up in a certain way. So without knowing it, I've already had an unconscious bias because of what's been imprinted onto my profile without realizing it. And that's a massive learning curve. I think in some extent it's quite hard to understand that, and that's where you start to wriggle and feel a bit uncomfortable, because you actually look at yourself and say, am I biased? And something you might be able to help us with. We did the first panel on Sunday night. Is the plural of biases, or is it just bias? Because I said I would find out by the end of March, because it's almost like crocus and croci and cactus and cacti. Is bias or sheep and sheep? It's one word, and it can mean plural.
That's a really good question. Let's go to Google and see if we can find out the answer. Here is what Google says. Is there a plural to bias? You might use the plural biases in a general context, but if you're being specific while talking about more than one type of bias or a group of biases, you'll use biases. So it can be spelled B-I-A-S-E-S or B-I-A-S-S-E-S. Interesting.
It's now, yet to me, when I say biases, it sounds wrong. Probably by the end of the month, I will be used to it. But it's one of those words that's quite hard to say, because it's one you don't use very often.
Right.
But you see, this is where my brain, you know, sometimes when you say a word and you haven't heard it for a while and it sounds foreign on the tongue.
And I'm going to have to do something very unprofessional here for a moment. My Bluetooth device has just told me that it's running out of juice. So let me switch my sound device here. Give me just a second. So Pearl, keep going, and I will switch this.
Right. Yes. So I will say anyone that's watching this, be it now or on replay, let us know what you think about bias, and if you have any unconscious bias that you're not aware of, because I think that's something that we should choose to discuss, because
it's something that a lot of us are going to resist. I think
I completely agree. That's why, like I said, we had this conversation coming up to March, didn't we? And I said to you, I feel a bit uncomfortable using that, and I wasn't sure how to approach it. But then I had to really think about it and think, well, I say to everyone, how many times do I say, from a communication point of view, you need to be authentic. When you're authentic, you connect with more people. And I thought, yes, I need to embrace what I mean and what I understand by this terminology. But boy, it's a learning curve. It really is.
I agree, and I think it's not something that you change overnight. So I like the fact that you make it a year-long project,
Yeah.
because each of us is going to have to take our time to think through that and to explore. It's not just a thinking process, it's an exploration process of understanding different biases and then going inside and figuring out, do I have that bias? How does that show up in me? So I think it could take a while to make those changes.
But I mean, we were talking about this just before we came on air. I mean, yes, this is the second year I'm really running this process of the project and how I run it. Yes, I'm bringing extra things in, but you learn every time you iterate with
Yes.
with a product, with a project. I mean, if we're doing true agile, we iterate all the time, and each time we grow.
Right.
But the one thing I'm seeing that is different from last year is, yes, I'm good at what I do and I'm good at bringing people together. But suddenly I've got people trying to join my network, not because they want to work with me, but because they want to take from me. They want to take people that are in my network or use my network for their own gains. And that was quite hard to learn. That's quite a bitter pill to swallow, because you come into something with a really good, strong attitude. My thing is, I give a voice to the unspoken.
Right.
But it really triggered me where people are coming in and not even engaging with me, asking other people and saying, oh, Pearl Cox is doing this. I'm obviously not seeing anything. And I'm thinking, well, actually, you've been in the group for the last 3 months. It's not down. I've been posting and engaging. It's maybe people aren't watching so much.
Yeah.
But it does make you question, why are they joining things in the first place? And that is a massive learning curve for me. Because it's probably anyone listening to this, as soon as you start to become established or well known on a certain topic, yes, there are loads of people that really embrace that and help you grow. But unfortunately, there's also those out there that see it as an opportunity to jump in and maybe try and gain from all the hard work you've done, and by doing so they try and push you down in the process. I mean, this is wrong. And I always try and stay positive, and I'm thinking, there is a learning curve to show. And I think, dare I say, this madness of a couple of the last few years, I think some people are feeling this worry, almost terror, that they don't know what's happening, so they're starting a new area, and they're going in with panic and trying to take from everyone else instead of sitting back and trying to learn from someone else. Trying to take. And it's I don't know whether it is, have things changed? Because I know there's always new paradigms coming in and people learn something and we learn from it, but we can't keep doing the same thing. Like I said, this is the second year I'm running this project, and already I'm seeing there's certain things that I need to change from last year. What worked last year isn't necessarily going to work this year. The way we're taught to engage with people on social networks, we know that things will change. That look at the way Facebook changes their algorithms. You then have to change the way you market. Yeah. And so we won't do what we thought worked 6 months ago.
Exactly.
Necessarily work now, and that's quite a learning curve for us.
It is. And going back to biases, we need to figure out what are those biases that we have that maybe cause us to be triggered, for want of a better word, in those situations. Well, one of the thoughts that came to my mind as you were talking about this in the early part of it, Pearl, is the expression of, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery.
I've heard that 3 times in the last week.
Is that right?
I sit there and I think, well, I don't care if they're imitating me or not. I don't want them to. That's being quite honest.
And yet, we know that in so many ways, there's nothing new under the sun, right?
Right.
And so we each are out there gleaning what we can from what's out there, to create what we then begin to feel is ours, when in reality, most of it was influenced by someone else. Whether we had an idea of our own or not, it probably was influenced by someone else and what they were doing, because we are connected beings, right?
But I mean, this is where, like, you're teaching me just on this discussion, where I start to realize, are these the unconscious bias that I have that I'm not aware of? And maybe this year's theme will need or allow close friends to take time out and say, please be honest with me. Do I show bias in a certain area that I'm not aware of? And I mean, these could be quite delicate conversations.
Absolutely.
But they will probably be massive learning curves at the same time.
If people are brave enough to do it, courageous enough to expose themselves to another's viewpoint, and I don't want to say criticism or censorship, but just that peeling away those layers and exposing something about yourself that you either didn't realize or weren't ready to admit.
Maybe that's why that theme's been brought out. We started this by saying, when we first talked about this theme, break the bias, I automatically saw it as a political arena and thinking, no, not going to touch it. But already, just by just going through slightly and finding different information, I think it's a really big learning curve for everyone to see.
If they'll take advantage of it.
Yes.
And a lot of folks won't, but a lot of folks, I think, will.
I know with my daughter, where she works, their whole HR department, they are doing a whole piece of training to show people that they do have bias.
Interesting.
My daughter said at the time, everyone hated it. They hated to be told you are biased. You have a bias.
Yeah, I don't like being told I'm biased, because I strive not to be, but nonetheless, we have those things that we don't realize. Yeah.
And I think this is almost goes into the diversity piece, where yes, there's lots of things that we have to be re-educated in certain areas of diversity, because if you haven't walked any time in someone else's shoes, you don't know what they go through. And if you can't feel empathy from the other side, when it comes to a work relationship, any form of relationship, there's going to be friction, or it might be accidental friction, because you may be, you hit a delicate matter and you think you're being careful. And sometimes if you tread around it, you make more mess than if you actually walk straight into it, hit it head on, the conversation.
Yeah, good point.
Yes, we said it's International Women's Day. And yes, a lot of it is, I saw LinkedIn, they've done a piece of the top 10 women that they feel stand out through LinkedIn. I was quite surprised by some of them and they've actually explained the piece. I've only skim read it, and you know what I'm like. If I skim read, I've probably missed the main of the story. But the bits that I took out, they were saying why they'd chosen these people. There's definitely a diversity angle there, and the different areas that it's come from, and some of the titles that they've chosen. But it's interesting, and it made me look and see, and I thought, well, how do these people get that engagement? Because, this is what most people are looking for on LinkedIn, is to actually break these algorithms and really start to engage. And there, at least 3 of them I've recognised being there for the last 3 years.
Oh.
I'm thinking, are they still doing the same thing, or have LinkedIn got these set names in and so they bring them forward? You don't know, it could be one or either of those. Because 2 of them I know quite well, the people that are seen as influencers. And it was quite a shock to me as to how it was written. And again, I've thought, right, I need to think about this. How do I approach it? And if I want to be one of those influencers, how do I
Right.
go about reaching that? And
Right.
that's maybe something that you think, yes, I'm going to look at an article like this. I'm going to look at, there are so many different companies, different individuals running International Women's Day events today. There's lots where they've got key people speaking about certain
Right.
events, or different panels, or they've done podcasts, or just something on this topic. And
Right.
you're seeing the depth and breadth of the topics that people are sharing, seeing how different people approach it. Now, that's a learning curve in itself, to see how other people approach it and the results they get from it.
Good point. Good point. You mentioned panels, and Pearl, you're doing some panels around this. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're doing?
Right. Now, this again is growing from what I did last year. Last year, I had different panels and I had key topics on each panel, and then I had people that would join that. Whereas this year, I've not got a topic for the panel. I'm aiming to run 2 panels a week. Normally, they fall on a Monday or a Tuesday, and a Saturday or a Sunday. So there's certain dates that are going out there, and I'm opening up Zoom panels for women that have joined the International Women's Day group and said yes, they want to speak on this panel. Some of these people that were on where are we, on Sunday's panel, I had to stop and think what day it is. It was the first time they'd spoken in a larger group.
Okay.
And they felt quite nervous, but when they said that to me, I was so surprised, because they came across so well. And what I'm trying to do this year, I'm having to set a timeline, because I have learned most people will stick to a timeline. A few people that aren't experienced will be talking about their passion, and it will last for 10 minutes, and try as I might, I can't always get in. So I'm telling everyone now, I'm aiming that each speaker gets to have 4 to 5 minutes. The reason I'm saying 4 to 5 minutes is depending on how many people actually turn up.
Right.
And I take part in the panel. And if they do go over, I have warned everyone that I have the magic mute button, and I can because
So ladies, you have 4 to 5 minutes.
This is me sharing something that I did in an interview, which I only did it once. I had to do a presentation, and I was told it had to be 10 minutes. And at the time, when you first start doing that, 10 minutes you think is forever. So I'd sort of practiced, and I got it all, and I tried to put all my information in, and I thought, yeah, I whizzed through it, and I got it into 10 minutes. I got into the interview, and I relaxed, and I was talking about my subject. They had to stop me at 25 minutes. I did not get that role, because I kind of not fitted the remit.
Yeah.
For me, because I got over. But it's so easy to do if you're not used to speaking. And I did that. The last interview I had to do a presentation, and I think it was 5 minutes or something. So I literally said to him, I said, right, I've been caught out with this before. If you don't mind, I said, I'm going to set a timer on my phone. and I practiced beforehand, and I kept an eye, and I think I went about 5 seconds over. So as the timer went off, I was drawing my presentation to a close. And that people are used to, but it's a learning curve. So yes, where panels can talk for 4 to 5 minutes.
Absolutely.
But I'm using it as a PR stunt. You know what I'm like. Give a voice to the unspoken. Give everyone a chance to promote themselves. So in these 4 to 5 minutes, people get to talk about themselves, their business or opportunity or whatever it is. And this is a new one this year. They're allowed to share one service or one product that they are bringing in front of the
fantastic.
But that's a real plus. And then at the end of that, as we've all said our piece, I then open the floor and we talk about this break the bias idea. So everyone can have a voice. So it's slightly different, But it means then you can attend every single panel because there is no key topic. And you might say the same thing, but you'll say it in a different way because you'll have a different audience on the day that's engaged. There could well be different women taking part in the panel. So the whole dynamic will be slightly different. But as a speaker, if you want to use this as a platform to springboard, most speakers get by on one topic and one speech, don't they? And they do the thing. So it's a good practice run for people to say, right, they're going to get used to it, introducing themselves, because it almost becomes an elevator pitch. And I'm not saying do an elevator pitch for 4 minutes, because no, they throw you out the elevator. They would not allow you to do that because it's about a minute. But it's getting used to introducing yourself.
Right.
Really succinct, clear manner. And this is what these panels will do as well.
Awesome. There's a few points I'd love to come back and touch on. One is what you said about getting clear and succinct about it and practicing it and timing those practices. But then there's a third element to that. You have to realize that your level of comfort when you're delivering it will dictate the speed at which you deliver it. So the more nervous you are, the faster you're going to talk. As you get comfortable, as you talked about, you settled into it and you were comfortable in that one that you were being timed and went over. Your speech slows. You become more, it's less, got to get through this, and you really get into it. And your the speed can increase and decrease, but overall you have a more relaxed delivery when you're comfortable with it. So recognize that when you're timing it out. What mode are you in? What mode will you be in when you get in front of the group that you're going to deliver it to? And practice it maybe both ways at a higher speed and at a lower speed.
And I mean, you saying that reminds me when I first did my first ever live radio presentation, because yes, most people know that I was in part of an online internet radio station through the beginning of COVID and lockdown. And to begin with, we had to pre-record our podcasts, our shows, and they were sent in, and then we had a sound guy that worked miracles and it all sounded good. And then they said, Pearl, you can go live. Oh, and I kept getting these little nudges where they say, slow down. And I'm thinking, but I'm doing it the way I'm so used to when I record a podcast, when I recorded my show, I just talk into the microphone, and I felt quite relaxed. But when you're relaxed, you still speak quite fast, quite quickly, and you don't realize. I read on Clubhouse Monday to Friday in the morning and in the evening, and currently in the morning we're reading Power of Awareness by Neville Goddard, which is all Old English, and you have to slow down. Because otherwise it makes no sense.
Right.
And then also we read Serenity from As a Man Thinketh, and I apologize, I can't remember who that's written by, that book, but look, Google it and you'll find it. But if you look at that whole passage, Serenity, which I think is the first poem that is the foreword to the book, it's beautiful, but you have to really slow down and enunciate every word, because some of it, because I can remember the first thing, and I was reading it and I was really getting into it, and then there's this one thing, and it was YEA. Now we know, yes, we'd say yay, but because I was saying, and I went yeah. And to this day, it's still going through my head. Why did I say yeah? Because that was the wrong way to pronounce the word in the context of the passage. Afterwards, I knew and I remembered and I said yay. But there's, like with the Neville Goddard piece, we read a new chapter every week. So we take 5 days and we read this chapter. And even by the 5th day, each of the readers will still stumble on certain words because it's an archaic form of language. And that, again, teaches you to slow down so that people can hear every word you say. We were taught with the radio when we had the microphone that we were to put a different a cover on the microphone, and then you have one of the circular discs so that it stops. So you don't realize, I can't remember
It's
what the word
popping sounds. Yeah.
the T's and the P's, and you
Right.
don't realize until you get into that line of work, until you start podcasting and someone advises you, you
Yeah.
don't realize about all these different things, because to
Right.
you don't hear them because you're so busy speaking to someone, and as you listen to someone until you start to listen to the spoken word, and that
Right.
makes such a difference.
Yeah. And that microphone really accentuates those P's and T's.
Yes.
One of the things you talked about there was slowing down so people can hear, but I would add also to that, I would add also to that, so they can process what you were saying, because processing takes longer than hearing.
Yeah.
And so give them some space, give them a little time to process along the way.
Yeah. And because of the role I do, because you do it as well, when we are like the compare to this, like you will do the introductions and I counteract and then I'll come back to you. It's an art, isn't it? And as I introduce each panelist, as they're saying something, you listen out for a key piece that you're going to bring out and talk about.
Exactly.
If they finish their discussion, so that you see what those key pieces are that you want the audience to really
Right.
hear again. And likewise, when you're introducing the next person, there's some people that are new to me. I don't have a bio in front of me. I'm just going by, and so I bring in who the introduction is and how they got to be in my circle and how they're there. But that's quite a skill in itself.
It is. And my podcast episodes are all that way. The first couple of minutes are structured in having them talk about who they are, where they've come from, who they serve. And the last few minutes are structured in that I have 3 questions I ask at the very end. And the rest of it is just all springboarding off of what came out of that introduction that they did when they talked, and it's listening. You're right. It's listening for those key things and then being able to engage them around those points. And it's always fun.
Also, it's like we said about the speed that people speak. Talking on these panels or anything like that, like we've invited people to come on and join us when we do these events. Sometimes it can be scary when you've never done it before. It can be terrifying, and it's something that you and I do because we've done a lot of it. We know how to set people at ease and to actually get that story out of them. But I can remember one of the first podcast interviews I did, lady that knew her stuff inside and out. And this is where I started adding bits of my life history into things, because I'd spoken to her, within 5 minutes, she'd answered all the questions. And I'm thinking, wow, we've got another 55 minutes left. A long interview. And I suddenly started, that's when you think, yes, you need to pull and tease other information out.
Exactly.
Sometimes that's the skill of an interviewer, to actually learn and set people at their ease.
Right.
But you don't realize until you're there. I mean, now I'm talking and my mouth doesn't go dry. I can still remember the first few times when I spoke live on these things. I felt like my lips were stuck together. It was like everything, like I cotton wool in my mouth, because it was so new. And I could feel, and I'd have bits of water there, or I have mints or something, and I have these things. I'm going to show them here. Now, I have no affiliation to these at all, but they are called Vocal Zone, and they are used by singers and speakers.
Oh.
And you suck them, and they clear the airwaves, so it makes it easier. And it
Vocal Zone, huh? I'll have to check that out.
I got these from our friendly Amazon. Now, this is where I found them. They do lots of flavors. They taste awful, but they do what they're supposed to. But it's little things you learn, says she, going croaky, because I've done so many speaking events recently. But these are all things that you start to learn. And yes,
exactly.
Women's Day, we said this as the title. It's where so many more people speak. You see lots more panel options coming up, and you get a chance to share.
to share your message.
But they do not tell you how scary it's going to be the first
Yeah.
time. And tripping up on your words. I mean, on Sunday, now you know how experienced I am with this. I got my words wrong. I tripped up. I started speaking and I was on mute. And I thought, right. So I made a joke of it. And I said, well, it's Zoom. We can't have a Zoom call without someone saying, you're still on mute.
Yeah, there you go.
I was the one that was still on mute. And there she goes. And then it just makes you think all these things. But if I, as the supposed professional that's running everything, can make those mistakes, hopefully it sets.
Certainly anybody can, right?
Exactly. And it sets those for the first time, sets them at ease a bit.
Yeah. Just a bit of counsel for those first timers too. And you talked about having 4 to 5 minutes to deliver. Now, the tendency, I think, is to try to fill as much in there as you possibly can. How much can I tell them in 4 to 5 minutes? And I would suggest to consider less is more.
Yeah.
Make it impactful. Get your cadence down so you're not rushing to get it in there, and make each thing that you do bring out impactful so that it people do process it and they're listening to you, as opposed to rushing to get as many things in that 4 or 5 minutes that you can.
Yeah. And it's easier when it's online, because really we're just talking to the camera and we're talking to the other people we see there.
Exactly.
We're not aware that we're talking to possibly millions of people that
Right.
will actually view that. If you're in an auditorium, yes, you can see the 300, you can see the 3,000 around you, but you're always taught, choose an area, choose something at the back of the room that your eye is drawn to.
Right.
Because then it's easier to concentrate, or maybe have a family member or a close friend that you know that you can make eye contact with, and that's the person that you talk to, because then it's a way of feeling confident and comfortable. And it's all little things as coping mechanisms. I was always told to go into an interview and see everyone sat in front, the other side of the desk, as just being in their underwear.
Yeah.
To begin with, that was quite hard, because I wanted to giggle, and I thought, no, I can't giggle because I've got to be professional. But it takes that sudden worry away. If you see someone that's in an authoritative view, and yet you see them doing something that everyone does, like sitting there in their underwear, or still got their nightie or a nightcap or something, so you personalize them, you make them real. It's easier. It's a form of relaxation, isn't it? I mean, do you have you've touched on top tips, but is there any certain ways that you prepare when you're doing a speaking role?
Oh, goodness. I like to practice. I really do. And don't take your first writing as your final writing. Usually for me, the third time around is the charm. The third iteration is the one that I'll go with. But be comfortable enough with your content that you don't have to follow the script. Yeah. You can move around within it. You can add or take away or rephrase as you feel inclined to do while you're delivering it. And then another thing, and I struggle with this one sometimes, and I just switched, you may see that I just switched to now I'm talking to the camera instead of looking at Pearl on the screen. I'm now looking at the camera so that it looks like I'm looking right at my audience. Yeah. And so if I look at Pearl, my eyes are directed below the camera, right? And so when it's your turn to speak in those events, look right at the camera when you speak. When you're listening, look at that person who's speaking. But when you are speaking, look at the camera so that the people feel you connecting with them, because you're looking right at them from their perspective.
And it's that practice piece with, yes. It takes a while, because I'm a real fidget. You see, I move around.
Oh, yeah, me too.
I'm sitting on a cushion because I'm a bit of a short arse, and my face doesn't fit otherwise. And I can sit here, and I've literally pulled my screen, because I'm using my MacBook. My screen has come forward. My face feels the screen more, and I'm closer to the camera, which, yes, if I'd have taken the time, yes, you'd have got a better view. But because I had it up there, and when I move it slightly, can you see the difference?
Exactly.
Which is why I end up sitting on a cushion, which is why I slide and wriggle, because I keep sliding off the cushion.
Exactly.
There was one time when I didn't realise this, and I hadn't played around with where the camera was, that I sat on 2 pillows on my chair to try and get the right height. And then I've got one of these things that are ergonomic for my MacBook, so it rises everything so that I'm not looking down like that, so
Right.
neck ache. Everything rises so you sit up, that you're taller, you keep your shoulders back, and it makes
Right.
a big difference. But if you haven't got that, I started off with a load of books. I had a pile of books that I would put my laptop on, and also Little Word to the Wise, because I wasn't told until about 3 weeks after I'd used it. It looks great when you're on here. iPads have a wonderful camera, and you think you're showing your whole face because you can see it, but no,
Right.
showing half your face like that. And I thought I got this brilliant screen working with the iPad. And then a really good friend of mine, she said, Pearl, I'm going to tell you, because no one else has. We see the bottom of your chin, or we see one side of your face because of the way you have the camera
Right.
that you're using. I said, it's an iPad. Rather, so again, when I do a live to Facebook, I use my phone, but I have my phone set up on a small tripod so that it's the right level, and I have it portrait as opposed to landscape. So again, it looks different. You can feel the whole screen. Sometimes if it goes landscape, if you want to use that again and save it as a video, it doesn't look right. That's where you can have the gaps on either side. So it's little things like that you learn.
Right.
And again, it's preparing, because I'm the world's worst. I don't prepare. Some people that know me now, it's obvious when I haven't prepared, because I just go because I'm not planned in but it's, again, if you know your subject, you can confidently speak for a while and answer questions.
Exactly.
You need to know, especially if you're speaking, you need to prepare, and definitely practice. If you are given a certain time deadline, practice, because until you practice, you don't realize how much you can fit into that time.
And then take out your handy dandy little phone that you just had there and record yourself delivering that, whatever it is that you're going to be talking about. Record it and then play it back to yourself over and over and over again.
And be prepared. I still hate the sound of my voice. when you're speaking, externally, you sound different to when you listen to your voice back. And again, when I was on the radio station, that was a learning curve. I can remember the first day we went live and I was listening to my recorded piece. I walked round our back garden. I must have done it for the whole hour because I could not stay still. And I hated every second, because I'm thinking, I really sound like that. I hate my voice, but you get used to it. But this, again, when you're using a microphone, when you're using really good recording equipment and the software, that's where you get the clarity of the voice. That's where you have the echoes taken away, and it makes so much difference. But again, you get nowhere if you don't grow and put the work in. And sometimes it is that uncomfortable piece, being used to listening to your voice, learning these key tips and practicing. But you don't get anywhere in life if you don't practice and take those actions to move forward.
So I encourage you ladies to take advantage of this opportunity that's happening right now for women to be able to speak up and share their message, just like Pearl's panels that she does. There are other people that do panels or discussions. And if you have an invitation or an opportunity that you can do that and share your message to a broader audience, this is a great time to do that. It's an absolutely wonderful time to be able to get your message out there. So if you have an interest in being on our show here on this LinkedIn show, we'd love for you to let us know. You can reach out to Pearl or myself, or just put something in the comments here and we'll get notified of that. But just let us know if you have a message that you'd like to share, or you'd like to be part of a panel discussion that we do. We'd love to have that conversation with you, because our goal is to have more of these collaboration conversations and help shine the light on people who are doing good works in the world. And as Pearl says in what she does, you know, to give that voice, give you that opportunity to get your voice out there.
And also, I'd say make sure, if you do want to be a guest, please let us know sooner rather than later. We're getting more and more interest, and so we're filling those bookings closer. So
Right.
make sure you let us know. Please reach out, because we'd love to have as many people on these shows. And yes, men, women, like, we want
Yeah.
to talk to everyone. We want to share everyone's voice.
Exactly. Great discussion, Pearl. We never know where it's going to go, folks. Our show is so unscripted. Our time together, it's just, we know that we want to bring value and be able to help people, as well as sharing our messages. You know, I mean, it's important for us too that we get to share our message of how we're transforming people's lives and helping in the world. And I think you hear that throughout our conversation. So, Pearl, thank you again. This has been fun as always. I do know that Anastasia was with us for a little bit there. So thanks for joining us, Anastasia. And we look forward to seeing you all again on Thursday. We'll be here Thursday, and we'll see you then. Pearl, any last words?
Just go for it. Hopefully we've shared more hints and tips than we've ever done before on this show. So it is just go away and practice.
Yes, practice. And then look for those opportunities to get your voice out there. They're all around you. You just need to look for them. And people are excited to share your message and your voice with the world. So don't be afraid to ask. If you see a platform, ask if you can share your message on that platform. Ask if you can be a guest. You know, there are many opportunities for you out there.
Definitely.
Go for it. And with that, we're going to go for it and leave you. We'll see you on Thursday. Bye-bye.
Bye.